Here we have our recently purchased Mercedes-Benz C300 4MATIC Coupe. Obviously, a lot of you asked the question, why didn't you buy the BMW 430 or possibly the Audi A5 Quattro? As a luxury car, there's many things to consider, from performance, styling, technology, fuel economy, as well as safety. And I'm going to share all of those attributes with you folks today and explain to you why, in fact, I came about buying this car instead of the Beamer or the Audi. Let's get into it now. Life's too short to drive boring cars. Taking all of the three cars for a test drive. We talk about the BMW 530 with the xDrive. That price is around $48,500. Because it's the all-wheel drive, you can get the base model for a little bit less money with two-wheel drive. Of course, the Audi comes with the Quattro all-wheel drive system, and to outfit that, it's a little bit less money, about $1,000 less for the Audi A5 with the midline package. And of course, we've got the Mercedes-Benz, which I'm driving right now, and the C300 Coupe with the 4MATIC and the all-wheel drive. Now, obviously, the all-wheel drive system is something I was looking at. I didn't want a rear-wheel drive vehicle in any of these configurations. We live in a climate where often it's unpredictable, and snow-covered roads means that you want something that's a little bit more practical, sure-footed, and all of that. So those three cars were clearly all in the running. They're all in a very similar price point. They're all within about $1,000 of each other. And so it didn't really come down to base price. They're German import vehicles, luxury, and a lot of people get scared. So you would anticipate probably only about 50% value retention after 5 years for these particular models, and that's on both sides of the scale. My personal experience from BMWs, often they're built with a little bit of better rust corrosion prevention. On a lot of the body panels, you'll find most BMWs that start to get up in that 8 to 10 years do not rust as quickly as some Mercedes-Benz. Mercedes has had some highs and some lows. So overall, I would agree with that. And Mercedes, like I said, some of the plastics, you get squeaks and rattles, don't tend to necessarily hold up quite as well as the BMW. But we are talking about this base model of each one of these. And I'd say for an overall driving experience, the BMW, Benz, and Audi are relatively close. So they rank very well. And an overall score by J.D. Power and Associates gives BMW a 10. And as well, we're talking about Mercedes at 11, so it's very close, and Audi much further down the loop. So other obvious factors that you have to compare, of course, are the drivetrains. You know, we're talking about the engine and the transmission. And what I would say with that is they all have the base model engine for their respective classes. We're talking about a 2-liter turbo inline 4-cylinder engine. They all make similar horsepower. In other words, the latest Mercedes-Benz C300 Coupe makes about 255 horsepower, as does the BMW 330 makes similar power, 255 horse, and the Audi A5 with the Quattro system makes about 248 horsepower, so very, very close. The difference comes more in the gearbox side of it. You have a 9-speed automatic transmission in the Mercedes, which we bought here, which certainly allows you the potential for a smoother, quieter driving operation, as the gears are generally better well spaced. BMW has the wonderful and glorious ZF 8-speed auto, which literally is probably one of the best transmissions in the automotive or in the automatic world for any modern day vehicles. And then, of course, Audi, in my opinion, probably has the best gearbox of the group with the 7-speed double clutch or DCT gearbox. Now, they haven't been without their troubles, but from a driving enjoyment perspective, I would say the Audi certainly holds the best gearbox. And so that comes down to a personal choice. You know, you want auto, shiftability, speed, performance, reliability. Those are all some factors you have to think about. And then, of course, you have to look at basic features and themes within these vehicles. They all have their own sort of themes and design keys as far as the quality of the interior, the fabrics. They both have sort of their low scale fake fabrics, as well as a lot of them have the upscale leather interiors, leather steering wheels as a wrap. Can be standard on Mercedes as well as BMW and Audi. Often Audi, some of their cars come with the cross-stitch seating, and that's a very, very nice theme, of course. And what I'd say is BMW they have sort of that mood lighting or the ambient lighting, and they also have the illuminated, so the light carpet or the light floor, if you will. So when you open the door, you get the light shining down on the floor. I personally like the Mercedes-Benz nicer in that regard. And actually, when you open the door, you have the Mercedes along the door frame. You have it illuminated on the edge of the door. You also have, obviously, all kinds of interesting light themes throughout. You can change many dozens of different hues within the interior, from blues to reds and yellows and everything in between. It just feels like the ambient lighting in the Mercedes presents more of a presence. Audi also has their theme as well, but again, I'd say the win for me goes to the Mercedes. And the overall interior theme, BMW does a great job of it. It feels like it's well made and decent quality. It's very functional through their iConnect or their mDrive or iDrive systems, but it certainly, the Mercedes-Benz feels a little bit more dressed up in that regard. In terms of other stationary type or basic features that you can expect on a lot of these cars, Audi still has probably the best integration on their dash display and the digital display. They've been doing that right for years. Their MMI system is king. Mercedes has the 360 cameras as well, and even that outdoes cars from brands like, Jaguar and so on. So I would say Mercedes is doing great things with their digital displays. It's a great design theme, of course. One thing I'll add is the moonroof in the BMW feels a little downgrade, a little low scale, and quite frank, that's almost the type of sunroof you'd expect in a Toyota nowadays or a Kia. And now Mercedes brings up that huge sliding glass panel on the roof and just a much nicer piece. Also, I'd say from an interior perspective, there's no doubt in my mind, BMW has gone a little bit downhill, in my opinion, lately in terms of the buttons. And you push on the buttons and there's sort of, you see the whole console around it move a little bit. But I would say the Mercedes-Benz feels better. Audi feels even better yet. The controls in the Audi are even nicer. But from an overall design theme, you get nicer blend of textures and quality and colors. But the look of it, the presence, you look around and it feels like it's a much more luxurious place to sit than it does in the Audi and the BMW. With that said, I would say the Audi interior is staged up over the BMW. BMW takes last dibs on the quality and features on this particular round. Okay, then what about the overall performance? Performance for fuel efficiency, 0 to 60, top end. Well, I would say the Mercedes is one of the slower of the bunch in terms of top speed. 0 to 60 mile per hour time as well is 5.9 seconds, rated roughly on the C300X or 4MATIC Coupe, and the BMW is down around 5.3, and the Audi A5 is essentially around 5.5 seconds. So clearly the Mercedes is under 6 seconds. It's brisk, but it's the slowest of this bunch. Also, fuel economy, the best is done by BMW. We're talking 26 roughly mpg in the city and about 36 on the highway, whereas this Mercedes C300 is up around 21 miles per gallon in the city and only about 32 on the highway. So it's great, but it's not quite as good as the BMW and the Audi. The VAG Group Special is somewhere in between there. So from a fuel economy performance standpoint, I would say the Mercedes is not quite as up to par with the other two, but it's still more than enough for a daily driver. From a safety perspective, they all do very well. Every vehicle's been crash tested beyond belief, and so they all do very well. But the IIHS top picks for safety really come down to more lighting management and which car actually has better lighting to illuminate for that road in front of you in darker lighting conditions. I would say in this case, my understanding is Mercedes-Benz wins that race because it's got the most diverse and best standard lighting system that you can expect. Of course, second to that would be Audi, and then third to that would be BMW's lighting system. So from an overall safety perspective, it's very, very close. Neither of them are terrible, but it's just that Mercedes-Benz wins out. So the next important feature that we have to talk about comes down to annual service. And even if you have warranty, it's still important to consider that you still have to perform maintenance. And after 3 or 4 or 5 years, even if you have extended warranty, maintenance often is not covered. And so based on Repair Pal, you can expect to pay an annual servicing about $900 for a C300, and you can expect for a BMW about $970. Audi rolls up in the rear at about $1,100 a year. So again, Mercedes feels like the more economical version. I would say parts and pieces are going to be very comparable to BMW, that a lot of the fittings are very similar. You're talking about a lot of the cooling system, electric water pumps, snap fittings on the cooling system are weak points for all brands in this German automaker space. And of course, you're going to anticipate those types of repairs down the road. So I would expect costly repairs after 6 or 7 years owning any one of these 3 cars. So then we talk about reliability. That's one that we can't absolutely resist. That's an important factor to me, because as much as I love the driving experience and the performance and the styling and the looks and the technology, reliability is a really, really important facet. And of course, we have to consider the first of all, that most Audis typically fall last in that regard. They have a lot of struggles with electrics, passenger side airbag sensors, and the infotainment systems or the MMIs. And there's just a lot more electrical gremlins, of course, with the DCTs. If you don't stay on top of the maintenance, it's a lot more sensitive and it's a lot more costly to repair or replace a double clutch transmission than it would, for example, an 8-speed ZF Auto that you'd find in the BMW. So obviously, we're talking about overall reliability. Audi's going to take the last spot. Consumers Report states that BMW has slid up to number 3 spot overall, following only the likes of Lexus and Toyota, and I find that absolutely ludicrous and quite hilarious. Now, with that said, that's relatively late model vehicles, and I'm not saying BMW hasn't done great things. Absolutely. Their recent drivetrains, the B48 and the B58, which is their recent 4-cylinder and 6-cylinder engines that they're putting in a lot of their models, have drastically been improved for durability and reliability over previous models. Now, unfortunately, they've eliminated the electric water pump issue and they've gone finally to a mechanical water pump, which clearly was intended to improve reliability because they recognize that that was a problem. They have made some vast improvements. With that said, I would not say that they're vastly better than Mercedes in terms of overall reliability. I've owned many of both models, and from an overall reliability standpoint, I would say Mercedes generally does better, in my opinion, in the long haul. So enough about all the numbers. How did I get to the place where I decided to buy the Mercedes-Benz? Well, let's take it from the top. Overall reliability, fuel economy, performance, the numbers are all pretty close. We're not talking about an M car, an AMG car here. So really, it was splitting hairs. Cost, all very comparable. So then it boiled down to another thing, pedigree. I had to start thinking, okay, Audi is essentially Volkswagen and VAG Group. And with that said, what you have is a vehicle that is a little bit, in my opinion, not as pedigree and not as purebred as you find in Mercedes or BMW, which are just that. Mercedes just builds Benz. And the same would more or less apply for BMW. BMW is a close second. That's why those two are 1 and 2 for me. Then we start talking about reliability. Well, you know, looking under the hood, we're finding a lot of different things. Now, in terms of the base engine, the 4-cylinder, that'd be BMW's B48. Probably the most reliable engine in this trifecta, if you will. With that said, the Mercedes, it does have, there's some reportings, if you look at the forums, some people are saying cylinder number 1, cracked pistons. I believe that's a relatively small number. I've been researching that, and a lot of it has to do with potentially plugged off dirty EGR system, or as well, it might come down to using crappy fuel. And a lot of people often end up using regular gas, and when they actually specify you should be using premium fuel, a lot of times turbocharging creates extra stress and heat in the engine, and without the correct octane, you're going to potentially cause problems. Overall design, interior, exterior, there's no doubt in my mind the Mercedes has the flashiest, most chic, bougie interiors. You know, I'm at a point now where that's where you spend 80% of your time, is inside the vehicle. So you have to understand, you have to appreciate what that vehicle brings to you from the driver's seat. And from the driver's perspective, there's no doubt in my mind, the performance is comparable, so it's all cosmetics. And cosmetically, the Mercedes wins this. We look at styling. I mean, Audi has some great detail. I love the looks, the tail lights, the newer LEDs and the modern day Audis. The headlights, they were the winners in my opinion at one point with the LEDs, and Audi led that game. But I think they've sort of since fallen off a little bit, in my opinion. And that's where I think I prefer the BMW headlight front end better than what you're seeing from Audi. But again, Mercedes leads the pack in terms of the styling, the look, the performance on the headlights. We also know that's a contributing factor for safety. Stand back from a distance. Look at these three vehicles from the front. From the front view, the Audi looks pretty generic. It doesn't look bad. It doesn't look great. The problem with BMW now, they lost me. They lost me with that new grille on the 4 Series, on the coupes. They go with that oversized beaver style grille. But from a styling perspective, there's no doubt in my mind, Mercedes has the biggest impact from a distance. Look straight on and you'll see that Mercedes clearly has the most powerful, impactful front stance. And that was a big factor, and that was a big part of my decision making, was the styling interior, the styling exterior, and again, reliability, practicality, performance. fuel economy, but ultimately it came down to a styling update, and BMW is a little bit behind the game. Audi's a little bit bland, a little bit more like vanilla yogurt, at least in the lower end models like the A5s. But that's ultimately how I came to buying the Mercedes. And with all of that said, be sure to check that out. You're gonna love it. That's a Mercedes versus Toyota quality comparison. You're gonna enjoy it. It's gonna share a lot of information for you all about these cars. Hope to see each and every one of you on the next one. We'll catch you real soon. Bye-bye.